Welcome to Take Note Academy Online. I'm Martha. Thank you for tuning in. Today I'm joined by Emerald. Hi, Emerald.
Hello.
Thanks for spending some time with us today. So we are going to get to know you a little better and get an idea of how your career has unfolded so far. So would you take me back to when you was a bit younger? So you started out being into like dance and roller skating, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't so much that one came before the other, but before I got properly into radio, I was dancing. I mean, I was professional hula hoop dancing and I was disco skating. So it wasn't like I was dancing in like, a traditional capacity, but it was more of like, we were doing music videos, we were touring festivals, we were dancing in clubs, we were doing stage performances, those kind of things. I was like, yeah, it was more of a performative, I don't really know how to describe it other than that, but yeah, that was the kind of thing I was doing. I was sort of DJing as well alongside, but not professionally.
Okay. So what kind of things were soundtracking your life at that moment? What were you into musically around that time?
I've always been into a lot of different stuff at the same time, which I guess is why I found radio so compatible with my interests, because especially daytime radio, because obviously you're playing such a range of different stuff, and especially starting off at Rinse, because Rinse is very musically eclectic. So I was listening to quite a lot of different stuff, but when we were performing, we listened to a lot of disco. And I don't know, for me though, I was still listening to a lot of like UK underground club stuff, so a lot of garage, some 160 stuff as well, like all sorts. It's hard to put it in a nutshell, to be honest. My taste has always been quite what's the word,
Broad, I guess. Yeah. Well, that seems like that's painted a good picture for us. Was there anything that you picked up from performing in that capacity that you apply to DJing and presenting now?
I guess just performing as a physical and literal thing, being on stage and performing. When you do something like that especially is that non-traditional as well, it definitely is a baptism of fire in terms of being on stage and being in front of people and having to just like have the balls to be completely like out there, especially with hoops, and because it's kind of like a circusy style of dance. It's all very like expressive and like facially expressive and all that sort of thing. So I guess whatever nerves I might have had before then, or whatever stage fright I had, was completely stripped back when I did that kind of performing.
A really good training ground, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
So how did you come to settle on radio as a medium that suits you? Like, what do you like about broadcasting?
I have always loved people, and I love talking to people and asking questions and sitting with them and chatting for ages, especially strangers. I really like to get to know a stranger, which is probably quite dangerous when I was a kid, but it's worked in my favor now. But that's what really interested me in terms of broadcast journalism and being on daytime radio. And in terms of like DJing and actually, selecting on radio, like I said before, I've always had quite eclectic taste, and I like to be surprised, and I like to hear new stuff. So it kind of just, it made sense. But it's an interesting story how like I came to actually arrive at my first radio show. When I was training on disco skates, I broke my leg quite badly. I wonder if I can show you my scar. You can actually do this, can't we? Like,
oh yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
Yes, I've got 2 plates and 10 screws in my leg, which was not fun. But it was definitely an important event in my life, and I sometimes do view it as the best thing that ever happened to me, ironically. But so I broke my leg, when I was training. I broke my ankle and my leg and had loads of metal put into it and was out of action for a really long time. I was in a wheelchair and I was on crutches for a while. But what it kind of made me do is forced me to stop. And before I was doing all this stuff, I was so completely 100% like wearing myself out constantly, kind of doing too much, especially physically. And it was playing on my mental health a lot as well. So it was kind of like the universe being like, just bloody stop it for a minute and just take a chill and reevaluate some stuff, which I was forced to do, and I did. And simultaneously during that period was when I'd submitted my radio demo to Rinse, and Rinse were one of the first ones to come back and be like, why don't you come in for a pilot? And honestly, like the week before, I'd broken my leg. So I went in on crutches, still in this massive, like, you know, the first cast you get when it's still really swollen, not the fiberglass cast. And I remember going up the stairs with my crutches to this interview, and at like 6 a.m. on a really snowy day, getting a taxi to the radio studio at like 6 a.m. on my own, like going in on crutches, like, oh God, I don't know what I'm doing here. But because I had all that time off, it allowed me to really focus, focus on training and getting better and improving and just trying to smash it as much as possible. And since that day, I've been at Rinse for almost 6 years. It'll be 6 years in October, so 5.5 years since that day. And I honestly put a lot of that down to the fact that having that injury meant I could only really focus and hone in on one thing for once in my whole life.
Yeah. Tell us a bit more about the pilot process, just so that people who want to give that a go can have a bit of an understanding of how you caught Rinse's attention.
So I put a radio demo together, which is basically like a pretend radio show. So I did a 2-hour mock radio show. I based it on stuff that I'd been listening to recently. So I thought, what can I base this radio show on? And I'd just been doing a whole summer of festivals. So mine was based around the tunes that had soundtracked my summer of festivals. So, you know, this band I saw at Glastonbury, or this one I saw at Shambhala or Boomtown or whatever, and sort of kind of told a bit of a story throughout the whole 2 hours and spoke about the tunes. I invited a couple of my mates to come and do like mock interviews. One of them who works at Worldwide Radio now, his name's George Haskell, big up George. And one of them, a friend of mine, Megatronic, who is like she's a DJ in Dubai, and she's also a singer-songwriter. About the time we were living in East London. And so both of them I invited on to come and do like mock interviews, and she performed as well. So I listened to a lot of radio shows and I thought, what I want it to sound like? I want it to sound like me, but I want it to sound like it could be on air. Put this 2 hours together, had the help of somebody with the equipment in a studio to make it sound great and sort of piece it together and clean it up a bit. But I did it as live. And then once you've got that, you just want to send that around to however many radio stations you possibly can, literally fling it out to every single station you possibly can, give it as much reach as possible, and then hope for the best and hope that somebody comes back and says, you know what, this sounds good. What happened in my case was Rinse come back and said, your voice sounds good, this sounds good, you need a lot of training basically, and you need some guidance. But they liked my taste, they liked my selection, and they liked the way it sounded. So I went into Rinse for a little chat, and they gave me what's called a pilot. Essentially the graveyard show, which is at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning, or 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning, which is when probably the lowest listenership of any radio station is, really, essentially, unless you're roll through crew and you like listening to the radio in the morning. But that's generally where the pilot shows happen. And then from there, I just focused so hard on improving that you get better and you get better, and eventually you hope for the best and you get a better time slot and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So once you were in the door at Rinse and getting settled there, were you able to practice DJing more and continued growing as a DJ once you were secured your radio show?
Yeah, was at Rinse, and I looked into the studio, the practice room window, which was like straight in across from the radio studio. And I just thought, all that equipment's just sitting there and I'm not utilising it for like the first year or whatever. Actually, maybe, I don't know, for a few months anyway. And so I thought, I'm being asked to play all these nights where usually I'd just be selecting because I wasn't confident with my mixing enough. And I didn't have any equipment at home at that point either. I mean, I'm born in 92, so it's very much like the digital age of DJing, which is all like, you know, I was obsessed with collecting discographies and like, but it's all digital format. I didn't really start collecting records that much. I mean, I never really have. It was all quite digital at that point. But I thought, you know, this is time to properly, you know, I've got no excuse now with all this equipment sitting there. So I practiced day in and day out, basically. Whenever the studio was free, I was in there practicing mixing constantly. I didn't really want to accept any proper gigs until I knew how to mix properly. So I didn't want to be that girl, basically, who doesn't really, because there's such a stigma as well for girls who come from radio positions who are quote unquote DJs and they're just sort of winging it. And I thought, that's just not me. It's not my vibe. It's not my style. Like, I want to be able to do this properly and be able to, you know, be good and be one of the best eventually.
So who were your role models in terms of DJing? Like, which DJs did you really admire for their mixing style?
That's a tough one. I don't know. One man has always been somebody who's really inspired me. I think because we have quite similar taste in selections as well, and because he's quite multi-genre, which I like dipping in and out of genres as well. So that's always been someone I looked up to his style quite a lot, and I used to go and see him play a lot. But I mean, at the time I started like going raving, I was very underage. I was like 13 to 16 was when I started like going out. Sorry, Mum, I lied about where I was. But that time period in terms of like London club music was dubstep era. So that was at time of like when Red Light was making dubstep and Magnetic Man and Rinse were doing their forward nights at Matter, that club like underneath the Millennium Dome. A lot of those sort of heavier, like slowed down dubsteppy sounds. And I guess I was listening to a lot of that at the time, but I don't know, I find it hard to just pick out like one or two DJs, you know?
No, it is difficult.
But that was the kind of sound I was listening to then, but obviously like, I mean, garage is my first love and will always be my last love as well. So all those garage dons from that time too.
What would your number one tip be for anyone who has started to teach themselves to DJ during lockdown?
I mean, it's the same as learning to DJ not during lockdown, I think, because you're not really playing out, I guess, if you're just practicing at home. And that's probably what you'd be doing if you were practicing anywhere else. It's tough, I guess, because you want some hands-on experience where you're actually DJing in a crowd. But I'd say for now, utilize this time where you've got all this time on your hands to just practice, like mix non-stop. Actually, I gave someone a tip the other day who was saying they were just clanging constantly and they were sort of stuck in a bit of a rut. And my advice was, sometimes when that happens to me, I'll stop trying to figure out that particular sound and go completely the other end of the spectrum. So say if you're practicing on 130 or whatever, try mixing 140 or try mixing 160 or try mixing hip hop or something like that to sort of reset and refresh your brain. So I'd say experiment. There you go. That's my tip.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, experiment.
I would like to hear about your first DJ sets once you were feeling confident about the mixing. So sort of coming back to it, feeling like good to go on the mixing. What were your expectations around like your first few DJ sets, and were there any like moments where it all went a bit wrong that other people could potentially learn from?
Yeah, I just remember being really, really fucking nervous. I have really bad anxiety problems. So like, I honestly remember it so well. I remember sitting on tubes and trains, going to gigs on my own, and they'd just be like, you know, R&B and hip hop nights. This is what I started off doing before I started playing like underground music or anything left field at all. And I just remember being sick with nerves sometimes, where honestly I would feel like I was going to puke, and I'd be like holding down panic, just like, and sometimes I let it run away with me so much that it jeopardized my performance, definitely. And like, it just really messed me up in terms of mixing, and I just left feeling bad about it. So I just say, like, don't put too much pressure on yourself in those first early days, because nobody expects you when you're that early in your career, whether it's a career or not, or a hobby or whatever, to be perfect. And I think that the human element of live mixing is something that people like to see anyway. I don't think that clanging is the worst thing ever. Like, one or two clangs, even in a mix, sometimes I think humanizes that DJ and makes it a bit more relatable anyway. So yeah, I definitely let my nerves and my anxiety get in the way of things early on. And I kind of wish that, it's funny because it's Captain Hindsight, isn't it? You wish you had the experience you had now, but without those early days, you wouldn't have. So yeah, it was definitely nerves and anxiety for me.
Yeah. What would your advice be for new DJs? Things to watch out for when you're taking your set from the studio to a club environment?
I'd say, like, for me, I don't like it when DJs have their heads down. And I guess that's a habit of being in the studio so much, is that you're concentrating so much so you have your head down. But I think it's really important to be receptive to a crowd, because at the end of the day, as a DJ or a selector, especially in your early days, like, you have to incorporate what the club wants to hear, and you have to be receptive to the crowd, because then it's just self-indulgent DJing. I mean, if you're on a hugely successful level, like some of the biggest DJs, they don't really, they don't have to really do that. They can just play whatever they want, and everybody's there to see what they want to play. But I think it's important to not be too self-indulgent when you're in a club, and be receptive to what goes down well, what the crowd wants to hear, and yeah.
Have you found that you've had to apply different skills to your DJ sets at festivals and stuff like that compared to your radio shows?
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the reasons why I love radio, and why I love having guests on my radio show, because you have that freedom on radio of expression, where you're gonna play tunes that might not go down well in a club environment, and the crowd might not actually want to hear at that time of night, because sometimes what you're booked to play 3 a.m. and you won't play the same tunes that you're going to play at 7 p.m. on the radio. So it's really nice freedom. I love radio, because you get to hear sounds that DJs might not normally get away with playing in the club or at a festival, because it might not be the right time. So that's why I think, yeah, radio is sick for that.
Well, let's hear a bit more about your current radio show, which is called Afters, right?
Yeah, well, that's it's currently on radio now, but it was a rave before then, but it was also radio, yeah.
So with Afters, and also with your One Extra residency, you've focused more on celebrating underground music, stuff that's like geared towards the club. Before we hear more about the show, tell me a bit about the decision to focus your energy less on like daytime style broadcasting and more on like celebrating the underground music that you've always loved.
Yeah, I kind of made a switch at one point, because I was doing the breakfast show and the drive time show on Rinse for like 4 years, 2 years of one and 2 years of the other. And it got to a point where I was collecting so much great club music, and I was into so many new producers and DJs that I was feeling really passionate about, but I never got the chance to play them on radio. And I kind of got a couple of like tunes I could slip in here and there, but it became a bit frustrating. I thought, you know what? I really want to focus on club music now. And I don't want to, if I can be completely candid, I don't want to pretend to like music that I don't like, which is something every single daytime radio DJ will tell you they have to do. There's no two ways about it. Nobody likes everything, right? And so when you don't get to pick every single tune that you're going to play, you've got to pretend that you like tunes that you don't like. And I just got a bit frustrated with it, and I thought, you know what? I might have to give up interviewing all the time, which I absolutely love, but it's time that I made that switch and start focusing and honing in on one thing, you know? So I decided with my One Extra show that it would be focused around new UK bass driven underground club music. And I was going to shine a light on Unsung Heroes, which are amazing producers that I thought needed more airtime. But then also I wanted to interview DJs like I've had Plastician on, Maya Jane Coles, you know, people who are more established in that world, but bring them on as well as the young, new emerging talent, and sort of explore those two territories within it, which always feed into each other as well. And that's what I do with my weekly show on Rinse as well.
And have you found that you've had to make little adjustments or growth or adaptations to your broadcasting style, or the way you even prepare and plan these two very different shows?
Yeah, because the sounds are so different. And like with my One Extra show, I've split it up so that I've got like half an hour's worth of straight mixing, whether it's a back-to-back with my guest or it's just me. And then the other portion of it will be me talking about new music and tunes, and rather than just blending everything. And then I'm going to have one interview in that as well. So it's a different structure than I'm used to, but it's nice because I designed it myself, so that feels good, you know, and that it feels right, which is nice. It is different because I'm not doing as many interviews and it's not as frequent, so I do miss it. I miss having that structure of every single day going and being on radio and having guests come in all the time, which is really nice. And yeah, I definitely miss it. I was thinking about it today, actually. I was like, oh, I want to do that again. But yeah, everything has its time.
So are you broadcasting from home at the moment?
I am, pretty much. As you can see behind me, here is my really messy setup. I'm sitting on my camping chair. Here is my setup, and I'm doing my weekly Rinse show from home at the moment. I've turned Afters, which is my rave, and which was always broadcast on radio anyway, but I've turned it into a live stream from home, broadcast on radio every Saturday night at the moment. So this one's on Friday. And my One Extra show is postponed at the moment. So they've done like a skeleton schedule, and then once everyone can get back in the BBC building after lockdown, then we should be ready to go again.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me a bit more about Afters and the original plan, because obviously the live element was really important for that.
Yeah, well, Afters started as a studio party, and the inspiration behind it was, after you're at a party, right, and you go to the Afters, which is normally at someone's house, and you're kind of surrounded by, well, I found myself surrounded by people that were my mates, that were like incredible music heads with amazing music knowledge, and other DJs that had just been at the rave previously. And they were all playing together, and I was hearing tunes that you'd never get to hear together. And it was a really amazing thing to behold. And I just thought, I feel like this needs to be, people need to see this, and this needs to be on the radio. And it's just these kind of sounds, like dub plates you'd never hear before, and just so much new music and unreleased stuff that you might never hear ever. Like DJs playing unreleased stuff that doesn't even have release dates and maybe never will be. And so I started off, my cat's just jumped to the table. So I started off doing that from the studio, from the Rinse studio, and we started off as like a small party. And then we took it to the club. And then the eventual plan was to have it as an official after party of these bigger raves. So for example, like Ministry of Sound Boxing Day party with Rinse, Afters with Emerald afterwards. So we take some of the DJs from that party, as well as me and my pals or some of their pals, and we do back-to-backs, and we play. We'd record the whole thing, live stream it if we wanted to, have it played on the radio. So yeah, it came from that kind of concept, and the plan was to make it like a twilight, early hours, like 3 a.m. or even 6 a.m. party that would happen with a sort of open deck system, but with some sort of structure as well.
Mm. So is this your first time kind of having your own brand, I guess, and having something to look after by yourself?
Yeah, pretty much. It's the first time that something that was completely conceptualized in my brain has become something that is actualized in reality, which is kind of crazy. It was quite scary doing it at first. It's quite scary to trust your own ideas and think, yeah, this is going to work. And it's, if I'm honest, it's been really hard to like think, hold on, this is an idea. How do we actually make it like the idea that it is? There's so much to it. It's so hard to book DJs. One thing I've learned as well is when somebody wants to book you as a DJ, get back to that person. Don't leave them waiting, because it's really stressful for whoever's booking you. So they go, any DJs listening, get back to that person.
You're on the other side now.
I know.
So how did you actually bring this to life? Like, do you have a little team that work with you on it? Have you been utilizing social media to grow the brand? How have you been getting it out there?
Yeah, I've got a little team who work with me on it. My manager, she works with me on pretty much everything. Like, we've been working together for probably 4 years now. So we're everything we do together, we bounce off each other. We're like in each other's brains pretty much, which is great. The Rinse team are incredible and do a lot of the, they help me with producing the artwork and promotion as well, with marketing it, with all the guest list stuff and databases, things like that, scheduling posts on social media, things that go out on my page will go out on the Rinse page at the same time. So yeah, the Rinse team have been really amazing with helping me with all that stuff too. It's important to have a team, I think, 100%.
Yeah, for sure. And have you had any mentors along the way?
In what sense?
People that you can bounce ideas off and have maybe a bit more experience than you, that have kind of guided you at all?
I think unofficially I have, yeah. In the form of, like, for instance, my manager, Genius from Rinse, has been a real great, like, I call him dad sometimes. Yeah, and a lot of my mates who are DJs or work in music as well, who I've known for a very long time, have really given me invaluable advice and experience and hands-on stuff that I wouldn't have been able to do without them. But never like an official mentor, which I've always really wanted. I thought that'd be great.
Oh, it's literally never too late.
Yeah, do you want to be my mentor, Martha?
I feel like you're a bit further along than me. But
I don't know, you never know.
But when you're starting out as a DJ, and I guess being a presenter is kind of a bit more of like a reachable thing these days, or a tangible thing that you can actually achieve. I feel like there can be a lot of pressure on young people to have like this great team around you, people that like ride out for you, that really are willing to invest a lot of time and experience into you. Like, you have to have a manager, an agent, a PR person. What do you think is actually necessary to achieve kind of what you've achieved, and what's worked or not worked for you?
Well, I didn't have a team or a manager for a while, and I'm quite a scatterbrain. Like, I'm quite disorganized in my brain, and I'm really bad at talking about money as well, which I find I just find it quite uncomfortable, especially if you're the one who's got to go and deliver that task alongside people you've been talking about money with, who are in the room. It kind of takes away from your job, essentially, and makes things complicated. So that's something that's, since I got my manager, it really changed the game. But it's something that I would say don't rush into, because it's important to find the right person, and having that great team that you really trust and have friendship with as well, and have complete openness with, is really, really important. Like, we're talking about the mentor thing as well, having people around you that you can trust and learn from. Like, I've been a tour DJ a couple of times as well. I was Katie B's tour DJ for a couple of years, and I was MIA's tour DJ as well. And having those experiences with people who are from a different generation as well, who can teach you those experiences, is something that is incredible knowledge, and is something that's really helped me along.
So important. So the way you have things set up right now, what are the kind of responsibilities of everyone in your team? So you have a manager who helps you with your projects,
Yeah.
and then an agent for the DJ stuff.
Yeah. So I have a manager who helps me with like everything. So she does my day-to-day, scheduling, that kind of stuff. She helps me with most of my correspondence, unless it's something that I've said I want to handle this one. So she will be like the main point of correspondence in terms of talking to clients. She does all the money handling, because I'm like, please do that for me. I don't want to talk about it. It's just awkward. I just find it awkward. She helps me with social media decisions, although I'm in control of those things. But she helps me with decisions in that aspect, because sometimes like I'm really bad at Twitter, and I find social media quite stressful and a little bit overwhelming sometimes as well. So she can help me look at things from that sort of aspect without me having to get too involved in it. Then I've got my agent, who is another amazing woman as well, and she handles bookings with DJing. So she talks to promoters, she pushes to put me on lineups, or she accepts offers from promoters who've said, can we have Emerald on this lineup? She helps with positioning and alignment. And also she comes on board when we talk about my rave as well, with afters and how we're going to grow that and develop it and that positioning. And then who else have I got? That's pretty much it. It's pretty much the three of us. And well, then Genius is technically my manager as well, but not my like hands-on one.
Mm-hmm.
So he's there in terms of like overseeing the whole bigger picture completely. And that's kind of it, really, I think. There's other people who do other things and work on different projects, but aren't technically on my team. I've got an accountant. Does that count?
It is interesting to hear about. I think there's a lot of support available basically for people going through, because you really just want to be focusing on the creative, like in an ideal world. So
yeah, definitely. And as you get busier, you want more time to focus on the creative. I mean, it's a different time at the moment with lockdown, where I'm like, got so much time on my hands that I haven't had in years. But yeah, when it picks up and it gets busy, when it picks up and it gets busy, you want as much time as possible to focus on the creative aspect of it and getting the job done to as best as it can be without having to do all the admin.
Yeah. So what are your aspirations for afters post lockdown?
Well, I want to get to this stage now. I want to get to the stage where we're throwing amazing, sick official after parties and putting it in a position where we can invite incredible DJs to come down and play alongside amazing music heads and be supporting young emerging talent and give them that platform where they can be alongside established people as well. We were supposed to do an afters at Glastonbury. I'm so sad. We were supposed to do it at Gorilla Bar on the Sunday night at Glastonbury, which is where Shy FX did his culture party last year, which I played at, which was great. It was going to be just the best party ever. I can see it in my eyes right now. So I'm a bit heartbroken about that, but more things like that. So, I mean, we could take it to Ibiza. We could put it after Amnesia, like an after party there, or we could do it after Ministry of Sound in London on Boxing Day, or we could put it at a festival as the after party of that festival. So that's my vision with that. That's where I want to get it to be.
How would you say the pandemic and lockdown has impacted you and the clubs that you love, and what can we be doing in this time to support all our favourite venues, in your opinion?
I'd say don't be greedy, because without money, a lot of these clubs and festivals are going to die and are going to suffer. And I think to keep the music industry alive, I think just think twice before asking for refunds. Even if you're a DJ and you were promised a fee, I think just think twice about asking for that back and be patient and see what can come from that money that's in the pot already. If you're a punter and you're supposed to go as well, try and save your ticket for next year and just keep that money in the bank for that festival, because I think we're going to really, really see an impact that hasn't emerged yet as well. Like, I think the next few months and the beginning of next year, we're going to really, really see that impact. And a lot of clubs are already suffering. Like, a lot of clubs are already talking about having to get funding to stay afloat. So I think just have patience and try not to be greedy with your money, because it might be 50 quid to you, but that's 5,000 quid for a booking for a promoter or for a club, you know?
I think this year there's been a lot of time to reflect and a lot of sadness in the world, but I'd like to know, what are you looking forward to?
What am I looking forward to? I'm looking forward to going on holiday. I'm really looking forward to going on holiday. I really want to go. I'm looking forward to my rave. I'm looking forward to putting that first party on so much. I cannot wait to throw that first party. I'm looking forward to being able to play in a room full of people again and be side by side with people and, you know, be getting a bit loose and be sweating all over each other again. So I think it's on the horizon. I just got booked for a show in September, be it not in this country, but it's in September. It's in Malta. It's called Rhythm and Waves Festival. And that booking came in yesterday, so that's given me hope. That's right at the beginning of September. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the party, definitely.
Yeah. Is there one piece of advice that someone has shared with you along your journey so far in the music industry that has like really stayed with you, something that you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, I said this in an interview the other day, actually. I said, someone once said to me, this wasn't even someone working in music, but they said to me when I was working at this bar a while ago, they said, you never know what you want to do until you've done what you don't want to do. So I think it's important to value the bad experiences just as much as the good ones. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, thank you, Amal, for your time today. I think that's been really insightful, and we've heard a lot about your journey through music so far. Very excited for you to be able to put on your first party when you are out of lockdown. I want that for you. So yeah, thank you for spending some time with me, and also hello to your cat, who I've been hearing.
Hey, should we quickly say hello to him? Come here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you.